think we're talking enough that we should put it in a podcast again. And then you got the camera, and here we are.
We were some fresh-faced boys.
Yes.
And
You didn't have the
more
curls.
hair on my beard and none of it on my head.
It felt like an adventure.
I can hear the music playing in my head.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of the X Button. I'm one of your hosts, Alejandro, looking a little bit more sideways this time based on some camera arrangements. And with me, and now I'm looking directly to my co-host.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
I'm doing good. And how's life, Paul? Now that we're in September.
We're finally off the back of, I was just telling you before we started recording, it was Labor Day over here in the Americas, the Northern America part. Mm-hmm. And that was a very busy time. It was rough. It was very hot, and hopefully, I'm hoping that it gets cold soon.
Yeah.
I know it's not going to, but maybe we'll get like that one little breeze for half a day that brings it down into the 70s, and of course, the whole of the South is going to go nuts.
Yeah.
Start breaking out their hoodies and everything. That always happens every year.
Yeah. Last week, it was still raining. We're still like in some sort of monsoon. I don't know. It's just giving us torrents of rain. In fact, I was like driving in the torrent of rain today. It has made the weather so much cooler, much earlier than before. And this week now it's feeling a little warmer again. And I'm like, I just want it cool now. I just want. I hate being in my living room usually because there's no air conditioner there, so I just have to depend on like how the temperature is with the window doors open.
Yeah.
And when it's really, really nice, it's really nice being there outside. Like that October, November, December. Perfect. Before that, my face, because I suffer from dermatitis in parts of my face, that's some like redness. The more it's hotter, the more my face cracks. So that's why I like secluding myself in AC in my room. So that's why I play here now instead. But even though I have a really cool 65-inch TV outside there in the living room.
Mine's weird because my skin cracks when it gets dry.
Mm-hmm.
So in the winter months, I literally look like I've had like bar fights because my knuckles will crack and sometimes bleed and stuff. And like people have been concerned. They're like, "Are you okay? Like, did something happen to you?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "No, why?" They're like, "You look like you had a bar fight or something." Mm-hmm. And it's hilarious. But
and that's what's weird here where I'm at, because it's both humid and dry. Like, because of being in a tropical place, you would think it would always be humid, but then it becomes dry out of a sudden, and then that when you combine that with the heat, and then my problem with my dermatitis problem, it's hell. I have to keep putting like some cream. It's like some Head and Shoulders that helps me a lot. But enough of that nonsense, because this is the X Button podcast, our gaming podcast that posts every Thursdays from 2 p.m. onwards, God willing, available on the channel. YouTube channel Escape Media, as well as most audio services around the world, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. You can find links in the RSS feed at anchor.fm/escape-media. If you enjoy our show, give us a like and subscribe. And before we move on, Paul, we need to shout out our Destiny 2 reacts.
Yeah,
that's our most watched video now.
I haven't actually looked at it besides when you've posted it to me.
It's at 232 the last time I checked. Views.
It is currently at 285.
It keeps climbing.
I don't know who decided to notice it, but I'm glad for that.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a mix of the thumbnail look cool and the title is the most generic way for someone to find that title. Yeah. And they just found it. And maybe it also helps that it was short, so more likelihood of people to click on that, because when you compare it to our opening night live reacts, less views there, but still more views than most of our usual episodes. Like most of our audience we have found on audio services, even though we still put the video there, because it's always good to put out the video there, because you never know whenever one of those is going to blow up. Like our opening night live post reaction with Zach last year, that was like our most listened one, and now this reacts completely obliterated that. So I tell you, Paul, we got to do more reacts. put more stuff in the channel.
We might have to. You've been wearing me down. They're entertaining, at least when they have stuff that pertains to us. But
we have 2 coming in this week. We could have had 3 if Sony had actually like in the year in almost the year anniversary of it would have done another showcase, but they remaining silent and only speaking when they're annoyed about stuff like we're going to talk about in the news a little later.
Yeah, but it would be a lot easier to plan around it, because as it stands, who knows if I'm going to be available for it. I know you're planning on doing it, but it's like I wish I could be around, but they just kind of everybody makes up stuff as they want.
Yeah, so
disappointing.
So kind of like the alleged news was that on Thursday they were going to have their showcase, which would have been the year anniversary when we got the 2021 one, when you were just coming back from the hurricane. I remember you were just also coming back from grocery. And now I know that when we record, you always do grocery shopping. I actually went grocery shopping also. So
nice.
Today it's this week is Marvel Games on Friday, on the 9th. That's the actual anniversary of last year's showcase. So there's rumors that maybe Spider-Man's going to show up there. Then on Saturday, we're going to talk about the other thing that's showing up there. So we'll see. The Saturday one, I'm iffy because I think it's early, but I might do the reacts by myself if you can't. But we should do more because
if I can get away with it, I'm about it.
Yeah, especially because they're not Keighley stuff. You know, if we're watching a Jeff Keighley thing, it's gonna be like exactly. That's why we're not reacting to the Game Awards. We're reacting to it like by ourselves, just kind of like in the background, just gonna recap it because that's a 3-hour commitment.
Definitely.
So, but enough of that, Paul. Let's talk about the games that we have been playing. So
I'm hoping that I can keep it short this time because I've been trying to do better about that. Yes. We've been playing basically everything that I played is what you've played.
Yeah. So I can talk there immediately about it. So
yes.
What are your further thoughts on Saints Row?
So I played more of that, at least until The Last of Us Part 1 came out.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that. Yeah.
As far as Saints Row goes, I definitely agree with what you were saying, where some of the cracks started to show. A few of the things started breaking. I don't know if I said it on our recording, but one of these side quests just completely broke.
Yeah,
for me.
that your side quest was like crashing your console like constantly. So
it would crash the game at about the same point in the mission ever, like 3 times in a row. So I was like, okay, that's just a no-go, red light. And I think it happened on one main mission, but that was kind of random, and after I reloaded it didn't do it again. Besides that, everything really performed the right way. I got jump scared by a bus though.
Because they just popped out of somewhere nowhere.
They'll like swerve into you and stuff, and it's terrifying because you think you're safe and they're driving separate from you, and they'll just slam to the side and just collide with your car.
Has it happened with you that when sometimes chases start happening that the cars are so stupidly fast?
Yes.
And then sometimes you see them crash.
The NPCs will get panicked. It's kind of like back in GTA 5 when like you do one thing and all the NPCs just go into panic mode. They start driving into each other and blowing things up. And it basically happens like that, except they drive faster than all of your fastest cars. And then they're like flying off into the distance and exploding in midair. And honestly, it's hilarious.
Yeah, the game
knocks you off, but usually that doesn't happen.
Yeah, the game has like literally zero regards for actual world physics. And I appreciate that kind of level of jank right now because I haven't had that kind of stupid level of jank in a game right now where we're moving into more realistically animated games and all that. That it was just amusing. I was like, there goes 3 cars. I ragdolling like 3 times. And
I really do appreciate it. I know it's like technically a bug and a lot of people have been all pissed off about it, but it kind of reminds me of the 360 Just Cause to 360. This is an open world but super not polished kind of environment, and there's something nostalgic about it, which I know colors my review and opinion of it, but at the same time it's like I was enjoying myself, but also my momentum and my Steam started kind of burning off just in time for Last of Us Part 1 to happen. Now, real quick, do you want to share your Saints Row stuff before we jump in?
Yeah, I managed to beat Saints Row the day before Last of Us Part 1 came out, and I was so happy about it because I knew that based on your experience of saying what you were experiencing with some of these side quests, that I usually like to complete them, especially Saints Row, it's like a throwback to the small but still big open world where it feels like you can do everything. It's not that overwhelming. It's not like the compare that to Valhalla or Assassin's Creed Odyssey that is like so damn big. And I was like, this feels like something that I could come back to if I want to clean up once it's like more patched up, but at least just playing through the main story. It didn't break for me outside, like inside the missions, just outside one time that I showed you that my world completely stopped rendering and I was like using my wingsuit and flying beneath the entire world. And it was so funny being able to do that because I just couldn't fall. So I was like, oh, so I'm going to travel everything from beneath here with my wingsuit. And then it quickly reloaded and then everything loaded up. So I was like, yeah, it's like those reviews that dinged it for being buggy is like, they're not wrong. However, even like making my world all the way through, I'm just surprised that I never stopped having fun with that game. Like fun in the, I'm shutting my brain off. It's like the shooting is, it's not the best, but it's tight enough that I can really enjoy it and just mindlessly mow down all these like stupid black dudes that are muscular with like it feels like Wolverine knives that come at you. Some of the funny upgrades that you can get, like the dragon punch that makes your punch do like a fire punch. It's like
that one's pretty fun.
Yeah, the thing is that there is Saints Row the Third style silliness, even though they were pushing to try to not be as silly as Saints Row the Third from what I was. And I say that me having never played fully Saints Row the Third. I only played like the early hours, but I've seen videos.
I would say so far it still isn't quite as silly as Saints Row 3's silliest moments, but even like the fight gauntlet mode was something from Saints Row 3. The animations of you jumping into your character like Dukes of Hazzard, just freaking torpedoing yourself.
I just love that.
It, like certain aspects of it, even literally the prison break-in uses the same intro from Saints Row 3. I mentioned it to you where they played a Kanye West song. Where you start off in that framing, you jump out of the helicopter or whatever, and you parachute in or wingsuit, whatever. And I was like the same process except without a cool song in the background. So I was like, they're clearly taking a lot of inspiration from 3. But I think also a lot of the gripes of the characters not being very fleshed out or nearly as iconic as your Shondi, Johnny, and Pierce, and then a few of the other things, but it also kind of succeeds in what it's trying to do. So it's like I can't fault it for that.
Yeah, it's like it's a little janky. I don't feel like Saints Row this Saints Row in particular is not being pretentious about what it's not. It clearly puts itself at we're an old school style of game. Like that's Embracer's whole mantra. They're all grabbing all this old school IP and putting games out that feel like how you remember those old school IP. Obviously, there's going to be some gamers and critics that now that we're in the fart smelly area of like now AAA has to go super prestige, the super high quality and blah, blah, blah. A game like that, it's not going to be as well received. But to me, it's like it just shows that me being willing to just have something that I can just have fun with. I really enjoyed my entire time with Saints Row, and I'm glad that I didn't have the skill up problem that the very end of the game completely T-post on him, and that didn't happen to me. I was waiting. I was like, is this gonna happen here? Is my game gonna completely break at the climatic moment like it did for him? And it didn't. So I was like, yeah, it's like this is our experience post the day one patch and post a couple patches that they put in that at times I felt destabilize the game more. That's what's so weird. Some patches like make the game more unstable. That's just kind of like the nature of it. But yes, like I really enjoyed Saints Row. But again, we have to caveat that we were able to play this game because we had our arrangement where we paid half the price for it. So
that definitely helped a lot, because I don't think I would be as positive about it if I had to pay $60. But at the same time, because of how longevity is such a huge bonus for me, the ability to continue playing a game after I beat it means a lot more to me as opposed to you who likes the shorter version.
Yeah, I much prefer something that's shorter that is an experience so good that I'd be willing to retry it. That's always been my thing, that I'd rather have that kind of replay value instead of something that is just more ongoing. So mileage may vary there. I feel I would have enjoyed it as a 60 anyway, but it's still like knowing the reviews coming in, it was going to be a harder sell to try to plug that full money there. But that's why I'm glad we have it arranged, because we at least can try it. Another game that I was able to finally check off of the backlog list is Sifu, because the same week that I finished Saints Row, was when they put the other update that added a couple extra modifiers. This is a game that I've been mostly impressed with the developer, how quickly they have reacted to trying to make the game a little bit more accessible, because this game is just brutal. It's like it's a game that's so mechanically refined and unrefined at the same time. Like the feel of the combat is so tight and good whenever you get in the flow of it, but there are a few mechanics and some requirements of how you can beat some bosses and enemies that I feel the mechanic is not holding itself well. Like the you beat Sifu, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so boss number 4, the lady that doesn't have an arm but has like a bell.
Yeah.
It's like it requires you to do the L1 and try to dodge to try to get to her, and once again there's like it's not really clear which movement is the one that you may want to do to be able to either duck or just like lift your feet, and that just ends. I can't imagine that could really break me if I had just played in normal difficulty from launch. But them adding the student difficulty, which that's how you beat it, right? You put it on the easy mode, the student difficulty.
Yeah. That's
the first patch.
how I ended up doing it, because I got all the way to the final boss, and I feel like I could have powered through, but then right as I got to it, I heard that they were going to make an easy mode. So I was like, I'll wait. I don't feel like I have to prove anything anymore. And then as soon as that was out, I just played through it from beginning to end in student mode and wiped them out. And that felt great, because then I had the muscle memory of the regular mode, and I just freaking crushed everybody. I think.
Yeah, I didn't. I had to like rebuild my muscle memory with that. And I'm glad that then the modifiers that they added, especially if you're in student mode, is you can make the powerful enemies a little slower and normal enemies a little weaker. That's it. That can help a lot, especially with the tight window of the parry button, and being able to see it through, and then unlocking the rest of the modifiers that can make the game even harder if you want to.
Yeah, that is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's what I like. It's like slow clap, hands off to them, to be like to appealing for both sides. It's like they haven't dumbed down the design of that game. They have added the options for people to be able to see it through, but now they have added the extra options for the masochists to really prove themselves. And I feel nobody loses there. And I'm more how can I say this? I'm more willing to recommend Sifu now, especially post that August update, to like almost everyone, because now there's a way for them to really experience it. So it's a good stuff. And then obviously the much controversial remake of The Last of Us Part 1 came out. So before I say my stuff, Paul, because I have a few stuff to say, I want to tell me about it. What are some of your thoughts?
So
having gone through this this remake.
Last of Us is now like infamous in my mind for a lot of many things. And even I don't know if I ever talked to you about like when I first got into the series. Like I almost didn't buy it when it came out, because it just looked like, I think I was already on the way out for zombie stuff.
Everyone was around that time.
Yeah. So it was like, okay, this is interesting. That's cool. The little girl looks like Ellen Page for some reason.
Yeah, that was a big thing.
And I remember that was a whole deal back in the day.
In the reveal trailer, in the reveal trailer, she was much older, and then by the time they showed the game the second time, they aged her down to what we see now.
And they like changed her face because there was people even talking about that whole deal, which I still feel like it looks a lot like her, but at least it's not actionable.
Remember,
anyway,
Ellen Page is not Ellen Page.
You're right. I completely forgot that was a thing. So yes,
but at that time, he was Ellen Page. So
yes. So anyway, going through that whole thing, I think I bought it on a whim, like not even on release, but a little after, and just kind of like, all right, let's see what's going on. All right, what the deal is. And it's funny because we were joking about spoilers for The Last of Us Part 1, and I was joking how, oh yeah, I really like this whole Joel and Ellie thing. I hope they get to where they need to go and find a vaccine.
And find a cure. Yeah,
that was me when I was playing it, because I didn't no idea what was going on in that. Obviously, spoilers for The Last of Us Part 1.
It's been 9 years also.
It has, but I mean, granted, there's a lot of people that are going to be playing this for the first time through that, so keep that in mind, anybody listening.
And the TV show coming up.
That also true. So I was kind of going through without any understanding of what that is. So replaying it kind of had me both reminiscing and reminding myself of certain plot points that I'd forgotten, because there's certain things like Tess, and just how heartbreaking all that was. Certain
Sam and Henry.
Like, yeah, Sam and Henry sticks in my mind rent free. The Tommy water hydro plants, and then obviously the ending. But there's a few things that kind of like got lost in the shuffle that I forgot existed. Until people talked about David in the stuff, I kind of forgot everything leading up to the moment where he and Ellie have their boss fight. But like revisiting that was like, there's so much more tension in that, knowing how it goes. Where I was just kind of thinking about how it all plays out and how clever Ellie was to kind of get herself off of the cutting board, so to speak. And then how quick characters have to react to save themselves. And I know it's like me getting kind of lost in the plot itself, but it's just so cool to see characters like can't afford to hesitate in that world, and how you see both of Ellie and Joel being super competent in their own way and using what they can to their advantage. Like Joel is like a big bulky dude and uses his strength to just manhandle any enemy that comes in, and Ellie is way more clever about
that scene of Joel when he wakes up and then he tortures the two dudes in the winter chapter. Like, I
kind of forgot that had happened at first, and it hits that scene specifically, especially with the context of Last of Us Part 2, really was like, ooh.
Yeah, especially when you see Tucker, when Ellie explains to Dina when they reach one of the spots that they know Tommy was at,
because of the method that Joel taught him, and then seeing that's the method that Joel used, and just a lot of tiny little details, which I forgot to tell you. There is an Easter egg for Jack and Daxter. That I found.
It's in Left Behind.
No, I think there was one in the main game too. It's in the university. But anyway, I'll show it to you. I have a picture of it that I took a screenshot of. But anyway,
because they did remove the Uncharted and Jack and Daxter references from the toy store, and because they were in remastered, but there is a Jack and Daxter and reference in the arcade of Left Behind.
Okay, well then this is different. They were figurines, and there's also a Nathan Drake figurine standing next to them.
Nice. I didn't find them because they were just
survived.
there.
Thank goodness for that. But so getting back to it all, just how wild of a storyline that was. I mean, the opening still is so good at breaking you, because you feel every part of that. It sets the expectations for what you're going to get.
It immediately grabs you. It take in such a little time. It grabs you.
And it just it makes you uncomfortable, but in that, I understand this and I feel this, and it makes you sympathetic to the right people, and no matter what they do after that, you know those details, as opposed to seeing the evil and then going back. So anyway, it was a great reminder of all that. It was nice to see it all, because I think I said it before, the remake looks like how I remember it looked on the PS3, and like the reality is that on PS3 it looks a little rough in places, especially with like the limitations. Like, you can see the limitations now for the facial animations, but you don't think about them back in the day. Like, your brain just kind of fills the gaps, and now that you see it, then I could go back and say, okay, I see how it's like more hand animated instead of like mocap details.
And that's what's so funny, that I was reading that they didn't touch any mocap for this remake. They still use all the facial animations we're seeing right now. They were still keyed by animators,
which is great that they held on to that information, because some places are like, well, we're not going to use this. We're going to save some data and get rid of it or something. But the fact that they had that archived and were able to go back to it is just great. So, and just the last couple thoughts before I hand it off to you. Just, of course, the gameplay jumps. I love the weapon workbench. It feels so good to just open
lift
it
it
up.
Straight. Yes, lift straight out of 2 and see him do the work.
It's so great. And just to revisit that plot, and now I can tell people if they ever want to get into that, you can actually go play part 1. Maybe just set your expectations for part 2. And if I ever get that opportunity, I mean, it feels like an Easter egg in itself to find anybody that is interested in gaming enough to try something like that, but doesn't already know about it.
Yeah.
Because
I bet you there will be more people like that when the TV show launches next year.
To be able to guide them straight into, well, you like the TV show, I got some news for you. And that's going to be great to see. Also just differences, choices made by actors, and all the other stuff going on. So I'm super excited about it. Anyway, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, so from it's so funny going back to the first episode that we recorded after we came back in the show back in 2021, because that's when we had gotten the news that Sony was planning on remaking this game.
And there's a lot of outcry on that.
Yeah, because of the timing. It was like Last of Us Part 2 was barely a year old at that point, and usually everyone would expect Naughty Dog to have already wanted to try to do something different instead of still going back to the well. And obviously then there was the talks about this being a $70 remake of what seemed like it was still the exact same game with a prettier coat of paint and no gameplay improvements based on like some of the leaks that were happening.
Yeah.
So, and I remember saying I don't really want this, but then the more when I did my replay of the Naughty Dog games earlier this year and went back to remastered, that's when it really hit me. It's like, you know what? It's been almost 9 years and people think this game really holds up, and parts of them does. This story is literally the exact same. If you play in remastered, if you play here, it still hits with the exact same power. The big difference now is that the visual improvements of this remake have way enhanced scenes that you knew were great before. And you didn't realize it until you see like that animation, the animation tricks that they've added, and also the fluidity of adding a new engine. I'll say this: like replaying this remake. Obviously, again, also full disclosure. I need to put this disclosure now because now you know about it. One of my friends works QA at Naughty Dog. I won't say his name, but he works at QA, and goes up the ladder. So I have a little conversation chain with him. So take my opinion with a grain of salt, knowing that there's some conflict of interest there, even though he's not one of my best friends, someone I knew from college. This remake reminds me that everything Naughty Dog touches, they always go above and beyond. And when it comes to like their trademark quality and polish, it's like, don't hear anyone that says this is just a quick cash in, because they were able to do this remake at the level of fidelity that they did with Last of Us Part 2, their most impressively technical game they've ever made. Say whatever you will about the story. Some people love it. Some people not so much. But it's like they have a big standard of quality that for a full ground up remake, it's seen here in the environment design and all animations, the little details. And Naughty Dog is just like, it's just obsessed in the ways that they've even added extra personality to even the things that you visit in that place. Places I played many times back on PS3 and on PS4. It still felt really cool seeing the same kind of environments, but with that extra lift up. It's like you watching a movie you love with in 4K. That's why Gene Park from the Washington Post said.
Comparison that I hadn't really thought much about it.
Yeah, it's like this is like for the diehard fans that really absolutely love this game. Like to me, The Last of Us is my third favorite game of all time in the list that I've made for myself, and being able to like really experience this same game, but now with a extra level of TLC to it, it's like this is now the best way for anyone to first experience this game, or if they're planning on revisiting the game. Obviously, the remaster is still there, and it's a good thing. It's kind of like what's gonna happen with Resident Evil 4 when it comes out next year. There is a way for you to play the game as it's originally envisioned and intended. It's still there. But
that's the best way, as opposed to some places where are like, this is the de facto way. We're gonna axe the old version, just
and not putting it back. And looking at you, Rockstar. And And I feel a lot of especially the improvements when it comes to gameplay are things that you have to feel for yourself instead of being able to see it in a video. If you just look at video, you're looking at the exact same game. However, when you have controller in hand, you don't realize like the different kind of weight they have added to the character movement that makes you go through a level feel so much smoother. How easier it is to go from running a throwing animation and into melee and it not looking like a jerky mess. Like I tell you, it's like I was telling you that playing Uncharted 3 and The Last of Us, the games that were made around the same iteration of that engine, there was something that was happening with the animation work there that was making animations feel jumpy and unpolished if you're trying to do too much. They have added that extra level of cleanness that they found with Uncharted 4 here, that everything just feels smoother and more blended together. And being able to aim and shoot, this is the first time that I've really played this game and being more eager to just engage in gunfights and more of like the kind of like the desperate nature of the combat, because it's so much, it's something that really like pissed me off of doing gunplay in the original was that I don't know how there were enemies that knew when to move their face to dodge like to dodge my shots. And it because again the jerky animation that happened when everything is kind of like going into pandemonium there. So I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna waste bullets, I'm just gonna engage on melee and stealth, and that's how I usually play the first game. Now it's very easy to really engage this game in as a shooter in a way if you want to play it that way, and it just adds an extra dimension that makes you play this game in a different way that wasn't there before, and it feels more fulfilling. And this is something that I was noticing because I texted you yesterday that me being so weak-willed and feeling like, oh man, I had such a great time playing this remake. I played part 2 again earlier this year, and I did another run because I was like, I want to try that John Wick style playthrough that you did, that you're just playing all guns blazing.
Feels good.
Yeah, it does feel good. However, I will say this is like the story of part 1 is such that it doesn't feel out of character for you to go all John Wick.
Yeah, because they're already talking about this maniac of an old man killing a bunch of people.
Exactly. Whereas part 2, because it's all about talking about the cycles of violence and how far are you willing to go to push violence for things you love and all that. When you're trying and you see your character kind of like breaking down at her pushing too far on her violence, if you play it as Predator basically or the Punisher before that, it's like it doesn't really compute. There's like a bigger there's bigger dissonance there that I feel like part 1 doesn't have, so it makes it easier to like play that game as a complete shoot everything maniac. And when you add the modifiers for infinite ammo, for infinite crafting, for infinite listening mode, and even mixing and matching, like right now what I'm doing with that Last of Us Part 2 playthrough, I'm not doing infinite ammo thing. But by the way, to clarify to you, Paul, right now, I checked, and in the difficulty, there was a resource slide in part 2.
Oh, was there?
Yeah,
okay.
There was. So what I did was like on part 2 yesterday, I put like enemy and combat, I put it in hard, and resources, I put it in very light. So at least
that's right. I did that with this, and it felt really good because there was like some level of limit to where I had to go, but I also didn't have to really struggle to find things. And then also the listen mode pulse, so you could find items quicker. So that was just a godsend. So
you know what I did? I actually enabled in the accessibility options the magnifying visual aid that allows you to go into high contrast mode. That puts like a blue filter and you see everything highlighted in yellow, and you just like have to slide the touchpad to enable that and disable it. It just, because it's like, okay, I know in this room there's only one thing where that I can loot. It's over there. Okay, click, go there, pick, and just move. There's ways to make your progression and doing multiple playthroughs with this just go faster, thanks to all the accessibility options that they added that were also in part 2. That they did all that work there, and they were able to translate smoothly into this. And I'll say this is like jumping from part 1 to part 2, like back to back, they feel like the same game now. It feels like you're playing one continuous game if you're willing to do that kind of that kind of playthrough, and it's props to them. Now I'll say that in a more cynical way, now when I saw that picture of someone having the 2 box copies, one the PS5 version of part 1 and then the PS4 version of part 2, I'm like, Sony right now is in full on greed mode, and I know for sure they're gonna release a native version of part 2 on PS5, like maybe next year or in a year or two, because they really love The Last of Us, and I will definitely buy it because I would platinum it, because I also platinum part 1 in like 3 days. Such a fun platinum, like 100% of this thing. I really went all in with this remake, and just like
really went for it. I'm kind of impressed with that.
Yeah, when I saw that it was so easy, I was like, oh yes. And again, it's like this game is also a perfect length. It like I don't feel the part 1 overstays its welcome like part 2 eventually does.
Yeah, definitely.
So part 1 is
kind of, it gets in, it tells what it needs to, and then it gets out.
It's because the story is just so much more simpler. It's like at its core, it's just the road. It's like Cormac McCarthy's The Road, like an analog of it. Whereas part 2 is like 3 different stories happening at once: a story of revenge, of the redemption, and the cycles of violence, and the different character motivations and twists and all that. Like part 2 is definitely more elaborate. It's a twisty story that really goes places and makes you really uncomfortable, and it pushes a level of darkness that for some people it's a little too much, but then when it lands its emotional punches, they stick with you forever. But part 1 is like, it's more restrained, that it has moments that stick with you forever, but because there's so little, they come in with bigger impact. Part 2 tries to
interspersed with a lot of levity at times, which really helps. Like, okay, we just watched several characters commit suicide. But hey, here's a joke book, but it's not like in a way that it's like, oh my goodness, read the room. It's like, okay, I am going to latch onto this because I really need a ray of sunshine in this moment, and I feel like it lands a lot better.
Yes, because and the thing is that those jokes are read in the Ellie that reads them. Whenever you like if you're able to trigger everything to make her read those jokes, depending on how you like pick some stuff, it still works within the context of the game. It's just like, man, this shit is dark. Let's let it up a little bit, and
it kind of makes sense for like a 14-year-old girl when you're in the middle of like looting bodies to go through a joke book, and like, because she's bored, to start talking to herself or try to do something to calm things down. And it works.
Man, there's so many scenes in Last of Us, in this first part of Last of Us, they're always so memorable. The ride to Pittsburgh when they just got off Billstown, and Ellie's going through the things that she looted from him, and goes through like the Not for Kids magazine, and me finally understanding why when she says, why are these pages stick together, and Joel's like, I finally understood that joke.
Oh no, that's terrible. Oh yeah, but it's hilarious, or the way that I don't think I appreciated Bill as much as I do now, because like, even though he shows up for that one brief moment and like nothing bad really happens to him, he helps you out, and then you leave and he goes about his life. But he was so unique and interesting that for whatever reason, he's stuck in my head for a really long time. Like, every character you meet is so well defined in their motivations that none of them really feel like just a throwaway random character, you know? And
everyone is so well acted. Everyone. Yes. Like Tess, to me, was like an even bigger revelation now that they unlocked a lot of her the facial animations that they weren't able to do back on PS3. Like that scene where her last stand, basically, there is something about like her face that really hits you. There, like her complete resignation, Joel's complete like, I'm so done with this attitude. Like, that's more you feel that. Yeah, you feel that more in his face. But then the gold moment of this entire game, the bedroom talk between Joel and Ellie in the fall chapter, that the extra facial capture, like the extra facial things they added that were there already, that's what they were saying, that they were able to finally put the entirety of the actual performance that they grabbed, like the entirety of facial, that they had to like just put as few as they could because the PS3 could only handle so much key animations. And seeing that is like, you just don't realize how much nuance there was to that performance. And even though like impressive that Naughty Dog still was able to convey a lot of powerful emotion with the little that they had, just seeing it now all in full is like this first Last of Us is like, it's truly still a masterpiece in third person narrative action games still to this day. And I feel like this is how anyone has to like re-experience it. and I'm glad both versions are there now. And again, with the price, we have to caveat, we had an arrangement that allowed you to pay, you paid 30 for it, I paid 40 for it. And this is something that I tell you, I would have paid 70 for this. To me personally, especially in me that I really love The Last of Us, I totally would have, because I feel it's just such a well-made package. And again, just a testament to, even when you think Naughty Dog is going to phone it in, they don't. Like, these were, people have been thinking Naughty Dog is going to be phoning in anything since Uncharted 4 fall. Because they're like, you're going back to the well again, but then Uncharted 4 can completely show them that they had a really great story in them that
At
was going to
first, I
prove
was
them
going to say
wrong.
that about Lost Legacy too, and
And yeah, DLC had turned out into one of
They brought
people's
some
favorite
heat.
games. So
and then after that, doing everything else. I mean, I can fault them for a lot of stuff, but I can't fault them for the effort and dedication that they give.
yeah,
Consistently.
yeah, and to me, it's like objectively speaking, Last of Us Part 2 is like I feel is their magnum opus when it comes to like full production, acting, and all of that. Everyone that gave their all for their latest project, obviously with a story that some would appreciate and some didn't. But I will say that it's good that Part 1 now is at, it has a level of, even though I will say Part 2 still overall plays better, because I tell you, when I was able to dodge, just clicking L1 real quick yesterday, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, like I feel they were able to keep the spirit of the original game, but I feel there's a way that I don't feel the layouts of the levels were that cramped enough that it would have broken them to give Joel a little bit of a dodge. Obviously not jumping. The levels are designed in a way that why would he need jumping when Part 2 is definitely more vertical. But crawling, I don't see other. Yeah, maybe you don't go behind, like beneath cars because it's so big, but I feel they could have added that. So if we can like nitpick, is like I feel those, just particularly just dodging and proning wouldn't have broken the game, in my opinion, just based on, because then when I see how the rest of that engine really adapted to be able to do everything so quickly and everything so smoothly, it's like it was just a joy to play this time. So I highly recommend The Last of Us Part 1. And if you're apprehensive, this thing I bet you is gonna go down in price closer to where the TV show shows up. So
That's what I'm would hope for a lot of friends, for sure, because at least for me, I struggle to sell the $70 for it personally, because as we've mentioned, my longevity, which granted, they do a lot of good stuff that would demand my attention for a little longer. I mean, the new game plus the combat modifiers, which I mean, Uncharted stuff made me replay that game several times, because it's like cool little stuff, like it mirrors the world and you get bullet time and no gravity, whatever, like just silly things, but also really cool skins, other things to unlock, collectibles. But because of how short it is, I'm like, oh gosh, I would have played. But
that's the thing. Don't undershot like a 15-hour game. It's like that's still like, I would accept that argument if we were talking about like a 4-hour game like Resident Evil. I absolutely wouldn't have never buy the Resident Evil 3 at full price at that. I feel like a total 15-hour game is like, I don't have as many qualms about that.
I think I was more building to the fact that because I'd played it before.
Yeah,
like, normally I would have zero problems with the price because of this experience, and especially the level of it. So like if you've never played it before, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you have, maybe if you feel like you really would like to dive into the gameplay of 2 without
having to play 2,
but having to play 2, so that's kind of where I would be at with it, because if we didn't have our situation where we can split the price,
you would have waited for a discount.
I would have waited for at least a couple of discounts, but as it stands,
and there is a chance, there's a chance it may show up at PS Plus Extra at some point also. So
it's an exclusive, so I could absolutely see it go into their collection.
I would say it's like for diehards, definitely dive in now. If you liked the game, unless you're like super eager, you can definitely wait. It's still like, regardless, it's like, it's an improved version of a game you played before. That's really what it is. Basically, I already mentioned it. It's like, this is like in the pantheon for me. So, exactly. So this would be me like with the Star Wars. Like if I was still into like collecting Blu-rays, because I barely have any Blu-rays, like I would buy a 4K version Blu-ray of the old Star Wars. So, and even Lord of the Rings, I'm that kind of consumer. So again, like mileage may vary. But to me, it was like, this is definitely one of my favorite things I played in this very lean year. So, but enough of that, Paul. So we got a few news to talk about, especially some
We
bubbles.
freaking do.
So press X.
Or so.
All right, Paul. So this is basically one story, but we're splitting it into two. First, with what was said last week and what was said today. So,
yes.
Number one, and again, because this story is never ending with the stupid now the CMA going through this deal and going through all the regulators. So
ride never ends.
Yeah. So story number one, part one, basically. Xbox commits to Call of Duty and PlayStation for, quote, several more years after existing deal. Story by Tom Ivan by BGC. Microsoft has provided some clarifications on its plans for the future of Call of Duty should its proposed acquisition of Activision Blizzard get the go-ahead. The company has said on several previous occasions that it doesn't intend to make the blockbuster franchise exclusive to Xbox consoles if its $68.7 billion Activision takeover is approved. And in a statement to The Verge, Xbox boss Phil Spencer said Microsoft had committed to making the series available on PlayStation 4, quote, several more years after Sony's current marketing deal with Activision expires. In January, we provided a signed agreement to Sony to guarantee Call of Duty on PlayStation with feature and content parity for at least several more years beyond the current Sony contract, an offer that goes well beyond typical gaming industry agreements. That's Phil Spencer quote. Bloomberg sources said to be familiar with Activision's plans claimed in January that the publisher was contractually obligated to releasing at least the next 3 Call of Duty games for PlayStation consoles. They're reportedly this year's Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2, and a new game from Black Ops developer Treyarch, which may not arrive until 2024. Part 2 of this story, let's say number 2. Sony says Xbox offered to keep Call of Duty games on PlayStation is inadequate. So, Sony's, our favorite, Jim Ryan, gave the statement to GamesIndustry.biz, kind of as a response to this deal by Phil Spencer that he said goes well beyond typical gaming industry agreements. He said, I hadn't intended to comment on what I understood to be a private business discussion, but I feel the need to set the record straight because Phil Spencer brought this into the public forum, Ryan said. Microsoft has only offered for Call of Duty to remain on PlayStation for 3 years after the current agreement between Activision and Sony ends. After almost 20 years of Call of Duty on PlayStation, their proposal was inadequate on many levels and failed to take account of the impact of our gamers. We want to guarantee PlayStation gamers continue to have the highest quality Call of Duty experience, and Microsoft's proposal undermines the principle. So, Paul, what are your thoughts on this petty squalling?
So, at first, because I was in the middle of work when you kind of sent it to me, and at first I was like, holy crap, if this is true, that would be crazy, as this is true being the deal ending after 3 years, and Phil Spencer really wants to actually make it exclusive. This is the big deal. And then Jim Ryan was panicking because, as we've already said, losing Call of Duty on the PlayStation consoles would be not quite a death sentence, but it would be such a huge blow.
It would
to them.
be catastrophic for their finances with how much money they make with each game being sold there. Continue.
Yeah, so basically just like what you said, it would be ridiculously damaging to them, especially on their hardware sales. And the fact that digital sales, Call of Duty Vanguard and Cold War are still top of the charts. So anyway, then with all this new information about the possibility that Jim Ryan is lying or not really giving the full truth, which we haven't quite brought that side of it up, but there's reason to cause doubt on what he's saying. And now that we're reading these quotes that just sound a little bit whiny, has me a little kind of seeing it from a different light. I mean, as you said with quoting this, where he's like, oh, this was supposed to be private, but since he brought it out in public, I'm going to say things. And
here's the thing, Phil needed to say this because his company is under a review.
Yeah, he has to be open about it. It's like this whole thing where it's like you can be silent until you're on trial in a courtroom, and then you have to say things that are then going to be public, because they're under the scrutiny of, what did you call it, the UK version?
The CMA?
the CMA is looking at them, which is like the FTC, is what
it's sort of, but it's kind of like the Competition Market Association that regulates that there's actual competition in the markets, and it doesn't get out of whack over there.
Well, thank God there's more than just America's version of that. That dumb American as I am, sometimes I don't know how things work outside of our country.
That's what happens when you buy when you try to buy a company that, even though it has American roots and most of its like workforce is there, they do so much outside of America that they still need to be approved. Yeah, they still need to find approvals from the different regulators.
Which, really glad for that. And I mean, if it doesn't go through for even one of those, then they can't sell their stuff in that country, excuse me. But yeah, basically just the fact that Jim Ryan seems to be complaining about the wrong things about all this, where he's like, oh, it's been on 20 years and we said that we want Call of Duty to be the best experience on PlayStation. If they're doing it on their thing, then they can play it here, which is objectively the best place to be. So therefore it's not good for all of our gamers. And I was like, that is not what you want to complain about in this. I would say if you wanted to complain about anything, it would be just what it would do to the environment of the gaming industry, where people are forced to buy whole new consoles or whatever. Like, people who have grown up on this, focus it on the consumer and the damage it would do on them, to uproot all that social friendships that have been created for all these years, whatever you want to do about it. But then also you can harp on the lack of competition. You buy the biggest video game company arguably in the entire world, and you're taking that one thing and you're putting it in your own box. It's like, yeah, you might be able to, but that is, as the kids might say, a dick move. And it's like, all right, maybe you can get away with it, but you are not going to be on the public side of this. However, he just decided to complain about his own thing. So
exactly, it's like, I don't think it, like, Jim Ryan just continuously likes to put his foot in his own mouth. Like, everything that he says always comes back to haunt him, or just makes everything worse. We believe in generations. That was him. So it's like him complaining about the fact that he still only gets 3 years after the current Activision and Sony agreement ends. That tweet that I sent you, someone breaking it down, that is like, the current agreement was for the next 3 games, which was Modern Warfare 2, was out here, Modern Warfare 2, the next game by Treyarch, and Warzone 2. And that's like at least for 2022, 2023, and 2024. And then like, then they still like, Microsoft promised them like releasing games in 2025, 2026, and 2027. That basically takes you the entire generation. So they can't negotiate for a console that still for a new console that still doesn't even exist. So it's like, I would say, like, when you look at that, it's like Microsoft has really committed to an entire generation of Call of Duty, at least like right now, to this. And then you put and they still, whenever you do that negotiation like that, I mean, they can always renegotiate. I can imagine renegotiations are going to happen when they know what games are going to cost in the next console. Since we saw like a price hike here, like what revenues are going to be. I bet that's why they put a limit there, because then they're calculating around the time when they know they're gonna move to another title, unless they're like, the PS5 and the Xbox Series X are the final consoles ever. So then we'll have a different conversation. There is like, the way this was being framed, it felt like whenever this deal closes, 3 more years and it's gone. But then when you really put it, like, and you break it down, it's like, it's not as bad as this whining makes it seem. And for a company that recently hiked the price of their console in every market that's not North America, that refuses to speak on when they're going to showcase what's coming next for their console, to a fan base that's getting increasingly agitated, increasingly wary, and increasingly fed up about their seeming incompetence and how they're handling things, despite them still being kind of like the top market leader right now. Even though, that's the funny thing, all these conversations, they're acting like they're not the market leader. Think about it.
Yeah. It doesn't connect. And it doesn't really make that much sense. It's one of those wait and see things. I get like, we still don't really know the intentions of what Microsoft is really going to do about all this until it's done, if they even are allowed to take it over. Which I wanted to ask the possibility of, like, if they say no, does that mean just Activision Blizzard stays their own thing then?
Yeah, and then they will
no
have to.
longer can have exclusives with Microsoft?
Mhm.
Huh. Which
That's
is
what's
be
weird.
interesting for
So
the development process.
yeah,
Because
so
they'll have to code that out for other systems again.
yeah, no, like right now, like what I'm really curious is if there's gonna be any regulator that doesn't approve this, then what does that do? Like, god damn it, there's my dog. We haven't had her like scream for a while. It's like for example, when Disney bought Fox, when they went through the different regulators and the year plus changed, there were a few markets that didn't quite approve a few things. Disney had to divest itself from a few things so that the deal could go through. So like they divested a few of the Fox properties, like Fox News and a bunch of sports channels that have different affiliates in different countries, in order for that deal to like be approved. It will depend on who says no to, and what would Microsoft then do to whatchamacallit, to make this thing go through. Because I would imagine that right now Microsoft is so in on this deal that fell on their laps that they want to definitely make it go through.
So you think rather than it just not happening, it'll definitely happen, but maybe they'll have to give some parts of Activision.
No, they will have to, like, to me, like the way I've always seen it is, even though like you don't sign a deal in perpetuity, I think that's what people that maybe Jim Ryan wanted, that Phil Spencer was gonna be like, yeah, we're buying Activision Blizzard, but here's a contract we're saying in perpetuity you're getting our game. Maybe they can always be like, we're always gonna be renegotiating the contracts to keep these games out for the other systems, because we did tell them MSNBC. There's that if you look at the Jeff Keighley retweet where Brad Sims from the BP from Microsoft made that interview with the money people, saying that it was their intention to like keep a franchise like Call of Duty multi-platform outside of just Xbox, because it was too big to just be exclusive. And the thing is that, to me, this underlines what I always said, that probably the worst thing that happened during the PS4 generation was that the Call of Duty marketing rights came to PlayStation, because then PlayStation then became, just imagine, it's like how much of a fizzy fit Jim Ryan and Sony are throwing over them losing Call of Duty, instead of like being like, okay, we're gonna then try to put another shooter in the market that could try to compete with that. They're just like, they have put Call of Duty at such an altar that they're like looking so weak and be like, man, if they take that from us, we're gonna get destroyed and blah blah blah. It's like, it just doesn't look good for a company that it's literally the number one seller right now. You can definitely feel that, even though Microsoft hasn't sold as many Xbox Series X and S as PlayStation 5s have been sold. There was like a recent estimate that Sony may have pushed 21 million and the Xbox Series X and S are like at 13-14 million. It's like you're acting like these guys are like stomping on you or want to stomp you, and it's like, it's an embarrassing look. And I kind of mentioned it last week. It's like us that we made on PlayStation due to where we invested our money and time last generation makes it much harder this generation when you see leadership throw this kind of fits. And I would hope that something really happens that Jim Ryan's just kicked off the curb, because this is embarrassing.
Really hope that as we've seen, people in power saying really dumb things doesn't seem to have the reactions that we hope they do. But I hope this is one of the rare occasions that those people actually say, hey, maybe you're kind of being crazy and we should have somebody else in power right now to move forward with our company. So
yeah, and because under the Jim Ryan era, it's like PlayStation has lost all sense of personality, all sense of fun. Everything seems so buttoned up, to the point that even they're the ones that are how can I say this, they're the company right now that is actually releasing exclusives to their consoles. Like, say whatever you will about the Microsoft PR spin. It's like, this year's an embarrassment when it comes to actual first party output, like deliverables. Like,
but Alejandro, they had Halo Infinite, don't you remember?
That was in December, so it doesn't count.
Dang it, you're right.
And it should have been out this year, but we'll definitely talk about Halo Infinite a little later.
Yeah.
But it's like, think about that. It's like Sony's the one that's actually like been delivering on first party stuff that they're releasing, on exclusives that they were able to sign up, that at least is something that they're offering to their customers, and they're acting like the loser.
Yeah.
And that's what makes all of this so funny. And it just sucks because it's like Microsoft again, like they may be like not delivering where it should, but man, they're playing the PR game so well that they seem like they're winning when they're really not. But it just goes to show you, it's like right now there's a level of incompetence over there at PlayStation at the high up level that, man, it's like it feels like a bomb is ready to explode there. It absolutely feels like that, and there's something's gonna like go catastrophically wrong for them if they're like acting this desperate, considering they still have a lot of content and the most desirable console, at least just based on how quickly it sells out. So, but yeah, that was basically story number 1 and number 2 together, Paul. So moving to story number 3, we heard this news from Reuters a couple of weeks ago. You made the joke about this in their first February episode, and the deal with the devil happened. Number 3, by a story by Tom Ivan from BGC. Tencent is acquiring a stake in Ubisoft's family holding. Ubisoft has announced a major strategic partnership with Tencent. The Chinese gaming giant is set to acquire 49.9% economic stake with 5% voting rights in Guillemot Brothers Limited, the holding company of Ubisoft's founders. Tencent's investment in the Guillemot Brothers Limited amounts to 300 million euros, which is $297 million. Separately, Ubisoft has authorized Tencent to raise its direct stake in the Assassin's Creed publisher from 4.5% to 9.99% of the capital or voting rights, a stake it won't be able to further increase for a period of 8 years. Ubisoft said the partnership with Tencent covers the development of mobile titles from several of Ubisoft's major franchises and the launch of several of Ubisoft's PC's titles in China. The Friend Publisher's governance is unchanged by the deal, and the Guillemot family retains exclusive control of Guillemot Brothers Limited. So they're basically giving so much control to Tencent, except a small percent that still keeps the Guillemot Brothers kind of like still in control.
Barely over them.
Yeah, but they basically made Tencent the devil in their ear by having such an amount of money that they now get both of us.
I know they said somewhere around here that like they have full control over a certain amount of years, like 3 or 5 years or something, that like they can't remove that no matter what happens. So at least it's like, hey, we guaranteed your investment and we can do whatever we want during this time. However, after that point, that's when things go freaking nuts. As we're expecting. I was a little confused because it said earlier that it was 49.9% in the holding company, and then specifically Ubisoft has allowed them to have 9.99%. So it's like the two separate companies, one the holding company that owns Ubisoft. What do you think is the difference in importance of that?
Yeah, I feel like what they did is that right now, again, they're like playing the angel disguised as the devil, where it's like, hey, we're going to give you so much money that you're going to then put towards the company, and we're going to be your best buds here. We're going to be your biggest supporters to take this company to bigger and better levels. That's what that investment towards the Guillemot Brothers Limited, the holding company of Ubisoft founders, that's what it tells me. It's like, it feels like a chess move of how Tencent is trying to like weasel itself into then becoming the majority owner in a few years, because it's like they definitely gave them like 8 years where we're like, okay, you're increasing your to 9.99% of the capital or voting rights in your stake, and then you won't be able to do anything more until 8 years have passed. So we'll still man the ship, or at least for the next 8 years. But after that, I bet you that then Tencent will gonna come in and try to offer even more money, that then their percentage is gonna flip from 49.9% to 51. I tell you, because you only need 51 and that's it. And it's what NetEase did with Quantic Dream that we talked about last week. Is like years ago, NetEase invested in Quantic Dream, kind of like as a minority to kind of help them, blah blah blah. And now suddenly it's like a period of time passes, then invested more, boom, now they own them. So again, it's like this is a Ubisoft so ravaged by all their mistakes, and the doubling down on a formula that completely blew up in their face, and people got sick and tired of it. Attrition for developers that people don't want to go work there, so that's why they barely have any games come out. Can you believe that the last Ubisoft game that came out was Far Cry 6 in October last year, Paul? And they have had nothing since then.
Dang.
So when before they would have many
have
games.
A lot of stuff coming, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Is the next story, but it's like that's why this Tencent thing is like ended up happening. It's like the bad decisions led them to a point that they were desperate, and of course, here comes Mr. Cypher in his mustache, in his full suit, with his and with raspy voice, like in that video that I showed you, and there he is.
Yeah, this is it's definitely one of those. Okay, maybe that like most people would look at it and say, "Oh no, it's fine. There's a limit. There's only a certain amount of years." But this is like they bought their death certificate for the 8 years. So unless something very different happens, we're looking at possibly Tencent.
You've seen the show Supernatural, right? Dean Winchester.
A little bit of it, yeah.
Do you remember that one time when Dean Winchester made a deal with the Crossroads Demon?
I think so, but
this feels like
because
that.
of memes.
Yeah,
so yeah, that
this feels like that. Also, so
it's like you're getting the. I mean, that's the whole reason why game companies go on the public market in the first place. And I was just about to say, basically, my takeaway from all of this has been, if you're a game company or interested in games, it doesn't matter how much money you might get from going public on the market. Don't do it. It is not worth it. And I feel like the gaming industry itself just has no place in all of that because it's run by people who have no interest in what you're making. Just the money.
It's just money.
And this is exactly where that's going to lead, because Tencent doesn't really care about the games. They want to make the money, and they want to just spread all of the stuff that is run by their wonderful benefactors.
Yeah. And money that eventually money that eventually just flows back towards the Chinese government, the super villain of the entire world. So it's really unfortunate. It's like, again, like as the monkey paw scenario of so many franchises that we like that are still hold at Ubisoft, and now they're this close to being controlled by the literal devil. So, man, let's talk about set franchises that are going to be controlled by the devil. Number 4? Yeah, number 4, Paul. Ubisoft will reportedly reveal multiple Assassin's Creed games this week, including one set in Japan and another revolving around European witch trials. Story by Tom Ivan with BGC. The publisher has for months been teasing plans to unveil the future of Assassin's Creed during Ubisoft Forward, which is taking place on September 10th, this Saturday, and details of its plans have now seemingly leaked from multiple sources, including Bloomberg and Tryhard Guides. In addition to the already confirmed Assassin's Creed Mirage, which we talked about last week, it's claimed Ubisoft will use the event to reveal 2 major series entries and a mobile game. The 2 big announcements will be part of Assassin's Creed Infinity, a large-scale collaboration between Ubisoft Quebec, which did Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and Ubisoft Montreal, who did Origins and Valhalla. Studios that will reportedly serve as a platform for multiple games with different settings. The first, codenamed Red and developed by Quebec, is set to take place in feudal Japan. Montreal's title, which is codenamed Neo or Hex, reportedly revolves around witch trials during the later stages of the Holy Roman Empire. While Assassin's Creed Infinity isn't expected to launch until 2024 at the earliest, Assassin's Creed Mirage is reportedly planned for release in spring 2023. So
this is where it's like the previous news makes this so much sadder because it took them this long to finally start coming out with things that people might be interested in again. And I mean, they've already basically murdered every other IP that they were dealing with, but there was part of me that was kind of hoping that they would come back to some of that, and Assassin's Creed was like the only one that they were able to revive enough that it survived.
It's the only one that makes them enough money that they still keep investing on it.
And even with kind of the downtick in certain areas, but the fact that Valhalla was their highest selling, apparently, means that they were going to continue on with that. So whatever it is, we know it's going to be Assassin's Creed themed, and at least this is like, we keep hearing more about this awesome Assassin's Creed Mirage. We keep hearing about there might be even another one, excuse me, which is just, I'm so happy about it because I loved the Assassin's Creed series, but now this means that it's money in the pocket of certain individuals that I would really rather not pay money to.
Yeah, so this is where it's a, can you believe that they're finally doing Assassin's Creed Japan after how many years of people asking them to do it?
And I think it's way too little too late, because that itch was firmly scratched with Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, and I bet you it's gonna be not even as close as good as Ghost of Tsushima. It's
gonna be such a comparison fest. A lot of YouTube videos with clickbaity thumbnails and titles, and it's just gonna be like side by side.
Look at this anime. Look at this UI. Look at this animation. There's I can already see the clickbait and the and the controversy like brewing over this one, because it's. And now this is going to be like the first one they're going to try to put into that Assassin's Creed Infinity live service, which I really want to see them, how can I say this? I want to see them do the pitch, like for us to pitch us what Infinity really is. We only really know about this because of Jason Schreier reporting about it last year around this time. Maybe July of last year.
Yeah.
And not only that, but then they came forward to kind of like sort of confirm, because it was like a denial. It was like one of those rare that they commented on, like, yeah, we have people, we're working on like a new ambitious way for us to like continue the Assassin's Creed series, and it turned out to be this. So I definitely want to see them make the pitch. I'm excited for Mirage just based on it being a smaller scale title, like that's just in with no RPGs and none of that nonsense. So it feels nice to know that at least an upcoming game can give us the kind of style of Assassin's Creed game we fell in love with. But again, it's like now everything exciting that may come out of Ubisoft, it comes with an asterisk, an unfortunate asterisk. So thanks, Tencent. Number 5, Paul. Oh, no. Yeah, number 5. Phantom Liberty is the only planned expansion for Cyberpunk 2077, CDPR says. So for context, like this week, CD Projekt Red had a live stream to talk about like the future of Cyberpunk, and they revealed the English dub version of the Edge Runners anime, which is one of the most insane things I've ever seen in my life. And I'm definitely not going to watch it because it gives me end of Evangelion vibes. Based on suggested stuff, but
you really need to watch more anime because everything reminds you of Evangelion.
Yeah, it's like it's just burned. Yeah, it's just burned. It's the one bad thing that has burnt anime like that for me. So, but yeah, moving on from that, it's like developer CD Projekt Red officially announced the game's first expansion on Tuesday, along with confirmation that it will be released in 2023. However, a comment from the game's official YouTube account suggests that this may be the game's first and last expansion. As spotted by XGP, the official Phantom Liberty trailer on YouTube received a comment from user Jonna Dragneel reading, "I'm quite intrigued by this expansion. I hope in the future more will come out since this game has a lot of potential." This comment then received a response from the official Cyberpunk 2077 account suggesting that there wouldn't be more expansions to follow. "Glad to hear we sparked your interest," the comment read. "As for the future, Phantom Liberty is the only planned expansion for Cyberpunk 2077, and BGC added an update from today at 2:55 p.m. As for further comments, CD Projekt directed BGC to a statement which reads, "We can confirm that the expansion in the works right now is the only planned expansion developed for Cyberpunk 2077. We made the difficult decision to develop it only for PC, Stadia, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X and S, as the scope for the expansion makes releasing it for previous gen consoles technologically challenging without compromising player experience." So Paul, the last time you ever touched Cyberpunk was 2020, right? You haven't touched it since?
I don't think so.
Not even the next
like the early part of the 2021, that is. Mm-hmm. But after that, I don't think I played it too much. Yeah, I think I stopped after that. I didn't even touch the next gen version.
Yeah. Would this bring you back?
It could. Depending on the price of this, and if people say it's actually pretty good. I was one of the very few stands for, and part of me is just in a tired place after all of that nonsense, and to revisit it would be, I don't know, it's part of it just left a bad taste in my mouth after I finally finish enjoying myself with it, partly because of all the negativity from people, and then part of it is just like, all right, well, that was a really interesting time in my life, but revisiting it just reminds me that people are really mean all the time, and that kind of I more think about what the game could have been instead of what it is, and that's caused me to look back on it rather than fondness, to be like,
it's just sad.
It's like my Metal Gear Solid 5. I really love every moment that I play it, and then I more often than not stop myself from going back to it because, man, it could have been so much better, you know?
Yeah. And it's so unfortunate because, for all intents and purposes, the next gen version that came out in February this year, people absolutely love. Everyone was like, man, it's bittersweet. It's so sad. This is when this should have only launched. And on top of that, you're disappearing for a little bit. And then on top of that, it's like, you just know that your reputation of the game is just soiled because of when they put it out, because they became public, and as a publicly traded company, they had made a promise to their investors that they were going to have that game ship out at a specific date because they had a certain amount of pre-orders, and they needed to sell that for like year-end bonuses. And look what happened. A year and change for it to be fixed. But I feel this expansion, especially it coming in 2023, is going to come out, depending on when it comes out in 2023, because remember, as of right now, before delays start happening, 2023 is looking mightily insane.
Yes. That's another reason why I wasn't sure if I was going to jump at it, because if it comes out any point in that early part of the year, we're going to have a lot of crap that's going to compete with it, and I'm not going to put any of that aside for this.
Yeah. I remember when they
earned my goodwill anymore.
Yes, and I remember when this next gen version came out, literally, no joke, 2 days before Horizon came out. I was like, guys, why you did this? And then I tried it and I told you, man, it's like, now it's like really good.
Yeah.
And
I will champion the fact that it allows you such creativity in your builds that you can basically, like, I created a wall hack simulator where I could just shoot through the walls of an entire building. You can go stealthy, you can go melee only, just like the stuff that you could really do reminded me of New Vegas and how awesome that was. But
that, like, Gene Park, he was one of the ones that reviewed that game very middly when it came out back in 2020. He recently revisited it right now in the next gen patch and all that, and kind of like detailing his experience. And just reading that is the kind of thing that I'm like, man, when the time is right, I definitely want to experience that, because now it's in a version that it should have been in all along. And maybe this expansion is going to be like a sort of Taken King moment for them, where that's going to like leave the game in like a positive high, that then kind of like makes the entire journey getting there worth it. But man, I just keep thinking, it's like Cyberpunk was a chosen one, and look what happened. So, oh well. Number 6, Paul. Time to shit on Xbox for a little bit. Number 6, Xbox Studios boss says the days of single studio AAA games are long gone. The head of Xbox Studios says that the days of single... We're gonna let... I already read that. During his
name.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Man. This is from Matt Booty, the guy in charge of the first part of basically all of Microsoft Studios. During a Q&A at PAX West 2022 over the weekend, Matt Booty was asked whether the large numbers of game delays over the past couple of years could be blamed mainly on the COVID-19 pandemic. Booty replied that while the pandemic clearly played a key part in it, there are other aspects of modern game development that make delays more likely. These included the difficulties in adapting to a new generation of hardware, the challenges in QA testing more complex games, and the fact that so many big games are now made with multiple studios. How we make games is evolving, Booty explained. The idea of a single team under one roof really doesn't happen that often anymore. I'll use an example. Our Perfect Dark team down in Santa Monica, The Initiative. So we just did this big partnership with Crystal Dynamics, and I read online, oh, this must mean there's a problem or something. It's quite the opposite, right? You've got this veteran team at at Crystal Dynamics, a big AAA team with over 100 people that becomes available. Of course, we want to work with them, particularly if they made a game like that before. And that's how we've done an awful lot of work. If you think about Age of Empires 4, which just launched last fall, that was made in partnership with Relic Studios up in Vancouver. Great partnership. And even something like Flight Simulator, we worked with a studio in France called the Sobo. And that kind of co-development, when you're working out with people like Certain Infinity, Iron Galaxy, Blackbird Interactive, all those studios are so key to the products that we make. That, though, also adds some complexity where if one of those studios has problems, that impacts the schedule. So the days are gone when you can sort of go, everybody, round up the team in the cafeteria. I want to tell everybody to work harder this Wednesday. That's long gone. It's gotten a lot more complicated than that. He has a point, because I've seen multiple developers now in many games. I don't think using the initiative as an example, it's a bad example for this.
Yeah.
Because when you lose like 50% of your staff, that was all veterans from big studios, even losing your creative director, Drew Murray, who worked on Resistance Studio, was the director of Resistance, and also Sunset Overdrive, that went to work there, and then he went back to Insomniac, taking basically a demotion because he wanted to be like a lead designer instead of like a director. It's like, I don't feel that it's you're just basically using this kind of like just to cover your own deficiencies of making your own game. Like, for example, if you want to, let's mirror it with the first parties over at Sony. It's like Sony uses help from art houses from like Malaysia, the visual arts team that help them with all this stuff, but the majority of development happens in-house. Not to say that they're not being helped, but it's just that in-house they're doing the majority of the development. This is basically trying to give themselves an out of saying that the studios that they have built from the ground up have just not been working, and that now they have to like bring in third-party help to be able to push that thing out the door. Obviously, games are being more complicated now. Like in this era where everyone was 4K 60 frames, like scale and all that. It's like it cannot happen. Like, look at Halo. Halo Infinite was mostly done by 343 and a million contractors that they brought in for the company and like limited contracts, but it was mostly done at 343. There were reports that the Coalition tried to help push the thing out the door, the guys that make Gears of War. But it's like, when then the results, you see them and they're not that. It's like, I don't feel you can use these examples to like to tell about the different state of the industry. I'll say this is like, considering the amount of the money Microsoft has, why don't they invest more money at staffing up their single studios instead of having to like go and recruit so many to try to make games? It's like, that seems a little incompetent for me, but
that's the response that I probably would have had with all that, because it's like, okay, well, if you see a problem with having to outsource constantly to other groups, why is what you have not enough? You are one of the biggest companies in video games entirely. Where is your money going, and why is it requiring you to go that far out instead of being able to source your talent in-house? Mm-hmm. Granted, I mean, he is right in a certain way, just like you were saying, where it's like there's a certain level of like, you just can't gather that kind of people anymore, especially post 2020. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people have decided to start working remotely for good or ill. Mm-hmm. And that just means that you have to do more things remotely and work around the clock and work alongside different teams where their schedules kind of work differently. It's more complex, blah, blah, blah. Granted, yes, he's right in that sort of way. But using his example for the initiative and the Perfect Dark process, which has been notoriously terrible, is mm-hmm. not a good look for him. And even later on, I think the VGC article actually mentions that, mm-hmm. hey, we reported back in the day, it's just been freaking terrible.
Yeah, however, VGC reported in March that the initiative has seen a fast and furious wave of senior departures in the last 12 months. So it's like, don't try to like sugarcoat it. It's like the initiative has failed to deliver. It's like, it's insane that you built that studio in 2018, we're in 2022, and we don't even see what this game even is. We know it's Perfect Dark, but like, we can't even see what the concept is like you have to bring in a third party for that. It's like that to me is just not a healthy way to have a first party family of studios. That's how it has to be handled. And I mean, perpetually we see first party handling done wrong. Final story, Paul. Halo number 7. I think it's number 7. Yeah. Ironic. Spartan 117. Halo Infinite suffers fresh content delays as local co-op is canceled. Story by Jordan Midler at BGC. Campaign co-op, the Forge beta, and Season 3 have all been pushed back. 343 has confirmed a new round of Halo Infinite content delays, as well as the cancellation of the game's local split-screen co-op mode. Campaign co-op, the Forge beta, and Season 3 have all been pushed back. The studio confirming a development update video and new content roadmap, both of which are available below. Campaign co-op, which was previously targeted an August launch, which, by the way, they didn't say anything until August was done before they spoke. Oh yeah, we delayed that. Will now arrive in November. So too will the Forge open beta, which was previously scheduled to arrive in September. And the game's third season of content, Echoes Within, has been delayed until March 2023. The split-screen couch co-op multiplayer, which had previously been announced, has been canceled, with 343 reallocating studio resources in order to improve and accelerate ongoing live service development and to better address player feedback and quality of life updates.
That just pisses me off, that especially that last part where it's just like, hey, remember that thing that we totally sold our game on? We're just gonna cut it. Just split screen co-op, which we said we were going to bring back because everybody hated the fact that it wasn't in Halo 5. Just, I know you loved it, kid, but we're going to go ahead and make it somewhere else, and don't even worry about it. We promise we're just going to make we're making Forge. It's going to happen, guys.
Which I'll say this, I've seen videos of Forge. Their Forge is looking mighty impressive. It feels like a game development tool now. But
yeah, which is all well and good, but
it's still not out. So it's like we can only just see what's teases of it without seeing the full thing. But the thing that really pisses me off is that in 343 reallocating studio resources in order to improve and accelerate ongoing live service development. Why would you need to reallocate studio resources when you have freaking Microsoft as your parent company?
Same problem as that previous news story. It's like if you're having to move things around and do so many things, it's like the worst part is like, I know I couldn't do any better with this, but it's like there are people that could. We see these studios all the times with the right people in power, with the leadership that they need, can do so much. And clearly it's not a resource problem, it is a leadership problem.
Yeah.
And this is just one of the many cases where Microsoft has been unfortunately not treating 343 with the right scrutiny.
Yeah, and not only that, it's like one would think the studio that's handling your flagship franchise, the franchise that you literally plastered all over your Xbox Series X console, even after you delayed the game, is like 343 and any Microsoft studio is the only studios in the world that to me don't get away with the excuse that we're reallocating resources. When you have a company that has $2 trillion in valuation, that can spend $68.7 billion in Activision Blizzard, they can spend the money. They totally can. They're just willingly not spending that money. That to me is just a sign of like a corporation that's a little maybe too profit driven than they care admit, despite them obviously not being afraid of losing money doing stuff. Like Game Pass at this moment, it's like they've said everything about, oh yeah, it's sustainable. The economics of Game Pass are definitely sustainable. What word don't they ever use? It's profitable. So you have a company that's willing to like really eat shit in a bunch of stuff, but you're not willing to put money into making the studio that's like handling the thing that put you on the map.
I think it's one of those situations, it's almost unwinnable, I think, because when you get to be that big, you have a lot of red tape to cross through and a lot of hoop jumping, for lack of a better word, to actually get the funds that you need. Like the company might have all of that money, but the process of actually getting that for your project is probably going to be a pain in the butt. And I have a feeling that enough executives, once again, the people that love the money, that are in charge of the money, aren't going to see the value in what you're doing, even if it put your whole segment of this industry on the map. Looking at it from Microsoft as the tech giant rather than just the gaming company, they're probably not going to care as much. So they're going to say, hey, this is the money that you're going to work with, deal with it. And not to like throw sympathy that's not earned out there, but I can see why it's probably happening. It's a shame that, once again, this is a company that doesn't care fully about the games, more so just the tech.
Yeah, to me, it's like the fact that Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, like did that video like promoting that he was now all in on gaming when they were not in the Xbox One era, and that they're willing to spend $68.7 billion on a third-party publisher on top of the $7.5 billion they spent on Bethesda. It's like, I don't want to hear that they don't have the money to then give the resources their first-party studios need to make the games as good as they can be. That's
like the answer right there, isn't it? They now believe in gaming. They just don't believe in this corner.
Yeah,
they don't believe in Halo anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the only way that I can buy that 343 it doesn't have the resources is that they probably cried foul one too many times over the last decade of their existence. That Microsoft is like, you know what? It's like, we've spent enough money on you.
I think so. They've probably hamstringed them pretty heavily because of their many failures.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And to me, that's a failure on Microsoft. It's like the same studio head that's been on 343 since like 2012, since Halo 4 launch. It's still there.
And we've talked about it before.
In
professional gaming, even here, I remember saying, when you have a professional sports team, if you have a losing season, even maybe once, but usually twice, 3 times, anything more than that, they're done, they're out, they're gone. Scrub their name from the records and put somebody else in charge. Why do we allow the incompetence to be so prevalent and to deepen its roots into these companies?
Yeah. And that to me is like the thing that, as Microsoft still says that they want to keep like buying companies and all that, that's the thing that worries me more, because it's like, if this is how they're treating what they have right now, if this is the current deliverables with everything they currently all own under them, what's going to happen when they bring the 8/10 studios that they're bringing in with Activision Blizzard, that thing closes? And they still want to put out more studios, and we barely gotten games out of them. And on top of that, their flagship franchise is like so badly mishandled. It's like, I tell you, it's truly astounding what Game Pass and the whatchamacallit, the pro consumer side of things has done for them. Because wow, it's like, just imagine if Nintendo handled a Mario game like this Halo game, or a Zelda game, or even Sony. Like, imagine if they handled their God of War like this. In fact, they were this close of closing Sony Santa Monica after what happened with God of War Ascension and their cancel game. It's like, Santa Monica said, it's like, if this was screwed, we were done. It's like, you need to, like, there has to be consequences for constant negligence. And it, to me, is just sad. And to me, this is what always makes me sad, Paul. It's like, I said that Halo Infinite was my 5th favorite game of 2021. And ironically, I still stand by that, because I enjoyed playing it. There's good in that game. The fact that it's a live service.
I stand by it.
Yeah, no,
I think I would rearrange my entire list if I could revisit it today.
And that's the thing, like, you didn't invest in the multiplayer like I did. That carried a lot of water, because if it had just been campaign, I wouldn't even have put a thing in the list, because that campaign was like, the only thing that I enjoyed was the promise of what was coming after we were done with the 3rd clearing of Halo 5. But the multiplayer had like such a solid foundation. It was such a cool, quick, I want to play something where I don't have to think about leveling up. It's just about the combat and me getting good at the combat and all that. Halo nailed that kind of fundamentals. The problem was that in a world where gamers not only like their fun gameplay, but also they love a great progression system. They love seeing their game be updated frequently and added more content, at least at a semi-decent cadence. Like not everything came before net. Even like something like Destiny 2 for us, that it changes a little bit week to week, but not really. Obviously, that the story kernels are kind of like what keeps us pushing there. Even then, it's like nothing compared to like the stagnation of what a Halo live service has been, where it still has like barely manages to keep up with the content where previous Halos did it well before. And again, I guess because if I wouldn't be more mad if the fundamentals and the potential wasn't there. This game has had infinite potential and it's just infinitely squandered. And now them having to like cancel split screen couch co-op, which by the way, right now there's a beta for the co-op. You can play split screen right now and it works fairly well. I don't understand why then you're canceling it. It doesn't make sense. It absolutely doesn't make sense. And to me, it's like, look, split screen couch co-op, I'm not gonna become too indignant about it as something that I would have used because I barely don't. To me, it's just in principle that I get mad that this was a feature that was also promised. And again, it just shows that it's insane. Like we're having a cautionary tale of like what happens when you let a company like coast under negligence and incompetence for so long and not like have more drastic consequences. And here's the worst part right now, like they brought back Joseph Staten, someone that was so primordial to Halo success in the Bungie era. He wrote the lore, he directed ODST. It was because of him that you could have Marines riding with you in the campaign, because 343 just didn't understand what was like a core essence of Halo. And he didn't come in and write anything. He just literally came in and nipped and tucked the entire campaign for it to become shippable, to be shipped. He just came in to kind of land the ship. And right now all of this is happening what's seemingly looking like a transitional period. And they're putting Joe Staten as the one that's being the bearer of bad news. Yeah. Like he's the one that came in and be like, oh yeah, this split screen co-op is going to be canceled. The season 3 is no longer season 3 in November. That's going to be a winter update. Season 3 is all the way until March and all of that. And like, I hate even more the idea that they're trying to scapegoating all this on him. Yeah. Especially when he's the one that game got delayed because of him. He saw the Craig reveal, everything what we saw at July 2020. Yeah. And then he saw that, he was like, oh no. And then he literally went to Microsoft to be like, I might need to go help there because it's like what I'm looking is no better. And then he went there and he was like, this is even worse than I expected. And then he convinced Microsoft to be like, listen, I know you put the box, I'm a Master Chief in your box. I know that you have promised that you wanted this Xbox console to launch with a Halo like it was back in 2001. The game's not ready. You absolutely need to delay it because if not, it's going to tarnish. And
strikes me as like the one adult that shows up after a group of kids have been trying to make a plan themselves, and adults just like, yeah, y'all don't know what you're doing. All right, we're just gonna figure this out and pull things together. So I almost feel bad for the guy trying to just do damage control as best he can.
Yeah, he can, and that to me is just sad because it obviously is clear to me that whenever they delayed this game and then they saw that 2021 was the 20th anniversary of Halo, they were so insistent to be like, we gotta hit that anniversary. And the short-term gain of
all the other big gaming companies were able to hit their marks for their special anniversary. So they probably felt like they had to. And
yeah. And that's the thing, like, look, and they did. And in isolation at the time was like, everyone was like, this is shockingly fun. Yeah. I remember, especially with the multiplayer. And then
I remember
everything was like, that was just a smoke curtain. Once it cleared, and then we saw that the early multiplayer release wasn't a sign of we have so much content that we're ready to launch early. No, they just launched early.
Oh, this is all we've got.
Yeah, exactly. That's been the worst part. So
yeah,
real unfortunate, especially because I tell you, like, I have Infinite installed in my Series S, and I play the multiplayer sometimes just to wind down. It's like that's how much I enjoy how that game plays, and it just continuously distresses me that that's how Microsoft handles their biggest franchise, and it makes me. Again, it's like it just makes me worried about once everything is finally hitting with everything they have. They really have to prove that even if Halo's mishandled, everything else has to hit so well for me to not think that they're complete incompetent at handling all these studios. So with that, Paul, we conclude the news for this week, and we have a few games coming out in the week of What's the date? I forgot to write it. It's for the week of Sunday, September 11th to Sunday, September 17th. So, Little Orpheus comes out on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One, Switch, and PC on September 13th. Scorchbringer comes to iOS and Android on September 13th. 13, the shooter from Ubisoft from back in the day that got a remake. He's getting a Switch version on September 13th, by the way. A new company is actually reworking that game. It's going to be reworked for free because it's one of the worst remakes ever made. I wonder if it's the same company doing the Switch versions.
I had a friend that was really into that series, and he was just like, why does it suck now? Because he doesn't really follow a lot of the other details of why things happen. And I was just sad to explain to him like a 5-year-old, like, it's okay, buddy, sometimes this happens.
Yes.
But yeah, continue.
Yeah. You Suck at Parking comes to Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, and PC on September 14th. I think that's a Game Pass game, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
Bear and Breakfast comes to Switch on September 15th. Metal Hellsinger comes to PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC on September 15th. That just recently got announced to be day one Game Pass. I'm definitely trying it. Outer Wilds, the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S version, comes out also on September 15th. I wonder if it's a free upgrade or you have to buy it. I don't know. Splitgate, I'm wondering why they put the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC version here, because it's like a PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S versions come out on September 15th.
Technically, it was a game that was in early access, so probably it's like the full version or whatever.
And now it's like it's done because Splitgate already announced that they're no longer doing updates for that game because they're gonna work on a sequel.
Shoot.
Yeah.
That's funny.
The game is just that thing was big last year. I remember it came out of nowhere.
I was never able to get it because the servers were so garbage that when I finally
they were not. They were so good.
For me and my group of friends, we literally couldn't get a match because it just wouldn't work for us on console. But
that's where I played
PC,
it.
It was fine.
No, that's where I played. I played on the PS4 version and PS5 when they had just launched. So I don't know. You probably just had bad luck. Wayward Strand comes to PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on September 15th. And Return to Monkey Island comes to Switch and PC on September 17th. Obviously, that would release on a Sunday, being a Switch console exclusive. So, any of these speaks to you, Paul? I'm not really,
but Metal Hellsinger maybe. Outer Wilds, I kind of bounced off of. I know everybody loves it, and every time I try to, I just can't get.
That's the thing.
It.
You don't like Majora's Mask, so. You're not gonna like Outer Wilds.
It gives me so much anxiety trying to play it, but I love the idea of it. So anybody that wants to try, it's a really great exploration game.
I mean, Scale Up considers Outer Wilds one of the greatest games ever made. Just to give you an idea.
Yeah, so, I am well aware of how much everybody loves it, and then I'm sitting here like, oh my gosh, why do I not like this game? So it's just one of those times. But
to me, just the fact that Metal Hellsinger is on Game Pass. I'm gonna try it.
Yeah.
Again, the beauty of Game Pass, for much of this I shit on Microsoft, how they handle stuff, is like Game Pass is still really good. And with that, Paul, we conclude this week's episode. Where can people find you?
As always, y'all can find me at Dork of Art on Twitter. I've been posting sketches, drawings, and little clips of games that I play. Latest one was my MLG moment in Last of Us Part 1, where I can just snap sometimes and be really competent for 0.3 seconds.
Yes.
How about you? Where can they find you?
They can find me at Twitter at @A_Dorsegovia. They can find me on Instagram at AlejandroSegovia93. They can find my written content at thecriticalcorner.com. And at times, I'm really thinking about restarting my Twitch again after I did that with Kingsfall like a week ago at twitch.tv/theslayergiant. Still there. So, and be wary that we may or may not have reactions for the upcoming showcases for Friday and Saturday. So just if you like and subscribe, you'll get the notifications. You'll see it there. So Paul, it's always a pleasure doing this with you. We will be playing Stranger of Paradise together. I wonder if we should stream that. So
we can get it to work. We'll see how it goes. I gotta drop off to make some dinner.
Oh yes. So, and everyone else, stay healthy, stay safe. Hope you all had a great Labor Day weekend, and and a great rest of September. And remember,
Press X
to play.
Good night,
Bye.
everybody.
And there's a kitten.